Originally in Germany. This is our hotel that we've just booked into. No English channels. We're about 200k short of Berlin. We left Calais this morning, and out here I'm not going to show you the view. Oh, well, it's a right odd place this, because it's just at the end of like an ordinary street and it's just all ordinary houses. Obviously missing something here, but in true style, we're cooking tea on the balcony because we can't be bothered to find some food.
Right, well, we're on the way to Berlin, and go on, John.
What? We've just passed what was obviously the entrance to the East German sector, because there was bits of wall and guard posts. Unfortunately, by the time we got the camera out, we now seem to have lost most of it. But we can only assume this is or was the part of the Berlin corridor running out to Berlin. If we spot any more checkpoints, we will try and get some pictures. Okay, we're in Berlin, and this is East Berlin's Fernsehturm, we think. It's their TV tower, but you can go up to the top. We might venture up there later, but we're trying to phone home at the moment and get my phone working. So there you go. It's how many meters? 360 something, 365 or something. It's pretty tall anyway. So we'll zoom in for look at that. There's a restaurant up there, but it's about probably about 15 Deutsche marks to sit in it and have something to eat. You have to book pay for the table just to rotate around for an hour.
165 metres, completed in 1969. You can see 40.
This is the view out of our hotel room. That's the garage forecourt just below us that we've been working on all day. And just in front of that Jeep is my Land Rover, just out of sight because we couldn't get it in the garage. And up there is the East German TV tower I was filming earlier. The light's blinking on it, so to show off a bit better. I'm showing it well against the setting sun and darkening sky. And that's across the city from our hotel. That's the traffic, and believe me, it's not that bad here. It's quite surprising. It's not a bad city to drive in. And this is the view out of the window in the daylight. And there's the television tower.
And for me, this is particularly sad as an opportunity to the UK. Why is that happening? Who do you blame? I think the outgoing British government's policy towards China and towards Hong Kong has changed. And I think it was wrong to do so. It created a lot of uncertainty during very
That's about as busy as the traffic seems to get. It's not easy to synagogue. No, I don't know what that is either. This is a museum.
Very wobbly Brandenburg Gate.
Oh. hotel. Yeah, that's the hotel album. Let's just reopen the last night apparently. Great, the trees are in the way.
Adlon.
Let's have a picture of the sign.
Where Hitler
And Charlie Chaplin have both stayed.
and Marilyn Monroe.
Martin and Dietrich. It's the Brandenburg Gate.
Wendy's must have been.
You read something out about that, didn't you?
Did I?
Yeah. No, it's not focusing. There we go. That does look familiar.
There's all mosaics on the bottom of the Franco-Prussian thing. And they got pinch and take to it.
Cathedral, which we bombed during the war, was left as a reminder.
And these are the bits that look like they come out of the nuclear whatnot.
Really?
Don't know, are they? Maybe they're not. They're somewhere around here.
And before we begin the tour itself, let me just give you an introduction to the sort of the history of Berlin, so that you can place what you might see or what I might say in some kind of historical context. Berlin itself is a relatively young city. In the Middle Ages, for instance, Berlin was just a village, and for several hundred years after that, it didn't grow much. About 5 around the church. That's basically the oldest part of the city, and was pretty much completely destroyed in the war. But the East Germans rebuilt it only in the 1980s, just before the wall came down, and they did the best they could. The quality of the reconstruction is maybe not the best, but that's largely because East Germany was a relatively poor country, at least compared to West Germany. 1959, and the East Germans built it basically to show that they could compete with the West in terms of technology. And unfortunately for the East German government, when they built it in 1969, that was the same year that Walter Ulbricht, who was head of East Germany, decreed that all of the churches had to take down their gold crosses. So for instance, those crosses would have been taken down in 69, and they were taken down from all churches. The reason for that was simply that the communist regime didn't want any ideological competition from Christianity, and so they wanted the churches to take down all of their symbols of Christianity. And they discovered in that same year, when they built the TV tower, that when the sun shines on the ball of the TV tower, which you can't quite see from here, but you'll see it later on as we move in that direction, it creates this huge golden cross on the ball of the TV tower. And people referred to that at the time as the Pope's Revenge. The way that you can see the old cupola here. That's the recently restored new synagogue. And that was the largest synagogue in Berlin. It held about 2,000 or 3,000 people. Museum Island. And that's because it contains 5 of the more famous museums in Berlin. The most Where we are standing right now is called the Lustgarten, or pleasure garden, I guess if you translated it. There's nothing very pleasurable about it right now, and that's because the entire area was simply paved over by the Nazis to use. At some point in the future, they re-landscaped the whole area so that it looks like it did about 100 years ago. But
What sits in the dog?
Yeah, it's Berlin Cathedral. And there's the TV tower next to it. Well, not next to it, but...
came to a close. As I said, instead of repairing the building,
This is
the
like the old
Germans just
palace
blew
with
it
the
up.
sin.
And the reason for that was probably symbolic more than anything else. They tore down the building only a few months after East Germany was created.
Yeah, that's the only part of the old palace where it stood where it used to be. And they put it there for the to survive the war. It's going to be turned into one of the foreign ministry of all things once the government's reseated here.
Building here on Unter den Linden now that the palace is gone. And it's about 300 years old. It's called the Zeughaus. And it used to be the armory for the palace. And the East Germans used it as the East German Historical Museum. And now it's basically the German Historical Museum. And it has a pretty good collection in it of artifacts from the last 1,000 years of German history. It's free also, so if you're interested, you might want to take a look at it. This yellow building that we just walked by, that was also another palace. It has the best collection of any cafe in Berlin of pastries and cakes and the like. And it's not even that expensive. So you might want to go take a look at it, or maybe even try something later on. Behind you is a rather small but important building. It's the guardhouse for the palace. And back then, the city wasn't much larger than this old area where we are now. And there used to be a wall here, the city wall, part of which is being excavated behind me there. And back then when the wall was here and when this represented the outer limits of the city, that was the guardhouse. To say anything, it was really almost opposed to beautification. And it's only later where August Bebel, one of the founders of the Social Democratic Party in Germany in the 19th century. And this square hasn't really changed that much since it was designed by the Prussian king Frederick the Great, who's sitting over there on his horse, by the way. That was only returned there in 1980. The East Germans took it away because earlier the East German view of Frederick the Great was basically that he was a Prussian despot who oppressed the peasantry, and they didn't think he had a place in the East German capital. But by 1980 they sort of softened their view a little bit, and they put him back there up on his pedestal. And the first building that he had commissioned, basically, Frederick the Great, was the State Opera House to my right. And that building was pretty unlucky in the war. It was actually damaged at the beginning of the war, and enough to hold the 20,000 volumes that were burned on that one. It has a quote from a 19th century German author. It says, where books are burned, in the end people will be burned as well. And while that maybe wasn't meant literally in the 19th century, of course, rather prophetically, it has a rather literal meaning in the 20th century, because of course the book burning was at the beginning of the Nazi reign. And then under the East Germans, nothing really came back. Not only that, Friedrichstrasse, the whole street, is where all of the cafes and cabarets, nightclubs. This is the Russian embassy, the former Soviet embassy. And this is actually where the Russians have had their embassy since about the 1840s. They bought this land a long time ago, and the Russian embassy's been here, and it's been there ever since. And I assume that the problem is that they can't decide how they want to deal with their own history, and whether or not they want to sort of rehabilitate Lenin or get rid of him. And so the temporary solution was to cover him with a box. And I don't know what their plan is, whether they'll bring him back or remove him in the middle of the night or what. But already for 3 years now, as of this July, Lenin's been under the box there. Where we're standing right now is Platz. And of course the most famous part of Platz is the gate behind me. But before the war, there were buildings all around the square where we are right now. And this is what it looked like back in the 30s. All of the buildings we saw was built, not only couldn't West Berliners and tourists come here, even East Berlin. It also wasn't crossing through the wall like This is the Reichstag Parliament building. It's about as close as you can get now because it's under reconstruction. But it was built 100 years ago. And of course, on the far end of West Berlin. As you know, well, like I said, in the 1920s,
Bits of the wall. There you go, that's the last remaining guard tower that they know of. That's going to come down soon.
realized just at the last minute almost that there was hardly anything standing still. So they quickly put this piece under protection, but most people still couldn't see after a few months where the wall had been. So they came up with this idea to put this metal band through the center of the city, the whole distance where the wall had been. And they started it right here, next to this old piece, and the money lasted for about 100 meters. And then it ran out, and that's it. And lately they've been putting sort of a red painted streak down the middle of the street. You might see that they just painted it at Checkpoint Charlie and also at the Brandenburg Gate where we are. I think they were going to do it this week or next week. And that's it. And when, after reunification, they renovated it and turned it into the Berlin Senate. So that's basically the government for Berlin with the Berlin flag here on the. It was designed in the 19th century as an industrial arts museum. Now it's used for temporary exhibitions. There's a good one going on right now about 20th century modern art. If any of you are interested, you might want to take a look at it. This building was very heavily damaged and rebuilt only in the 80s, just before the wall came down. And when they built it, when they renovated it, they left these two statues here as a reminder of what most of the building won't be taken down. Unlike that, days are numbered for that piece. But for this piece of the outer wall, the original one, they're going to keep it here. Although you can see that before they put it under, before they protected it with this fence, the tourists had already taken out so much of it that the metal reinforcement bar. So massive, of course, it survived the war pretty much intact. This was built in 1936 during the Olympics in Berlin, and this became the Luftwaffe-Ministerium, the Air Force Ministry. Göring's Air Force Ministry was in here. And after the war, the East Germans used it as a ministry building. Narrower every time I come here. Showing what it looked like earlier. Also, some of these other photos are pretty good. The crossing.
CIA headquarters.
Oh, that's nice. Processing plant, if you will, where they checked everybody's papers and the cars, the buses and everything, and made sure that nobody.
Eight people escaped in this. Do it yourself hot air balloon. Oh yeah. Flying. That's the sign that used to be on the wall. Now which Which way do you want to go from checkpoint, Charlie? There we go, that's the old checkpoint, Charlie. And that's the CIA headquarters that we were talking about this morning. This is the inside of the church that's outside has been bombed to bits. Missing bits have bunched it all up inside, so it looks intact. Before we came along, that's what it looks like now. Okay, this is the Rathhauser, or Town Hall. That might be a good new nickname for where we're a civic centre, mightn't it? Yes, my video clock is slow, that's because the Germans are ahead of us.
Poland. We just thought we'd get a bit of footage just to show you what the Polish
Rollerblades,
towns
can't be
are.
that. What am I doing? A bit 30 mile an hour through towns. I think if we go from a 10 they'll sell us a Jeep.
Probably not. Plenty of greenery around here.
There's Michelle. And she's trying to find out what time the place is open. Because we think we've missed it. We're at the castle at Rogalike. Zoom out and pan around a bit for you. And as you can see, it looks quite good, and it's highly recommended on the old rough guides. But unfortunately, we've got here at 4:20 and we think it's shut. I didn't realise how time was flying. Never mind.
What?
It looks very pretty from here, at least we can say, well, we've seen it. This is just at the end of the avenue where the castle is. It's quite impressive. We're not sure what it is like, but it's quite impressive nevertheless. So we thought we'd stop and get a video of it. I turn around slowly, not making you too dizzy, and then I don't know if you can see over there. See the avenue to the castle, and the castle's at the top of it, but I don't think we're going to see it from here. You get the idea anyway. This is where we spent the night, just outside the little town. We just drove off into the woods. And, the track goes back to the road that way. This is Cornick Castle. We have just been round, but they wanted more for the camcorder to go round than they did for us. So we binned the idea. It was jolly nice inside. There was lots of jolly nice polished floors. We had to put like slippery things on to so we didn't damage them and keep their floors polished for them.
15 million years old. It is a sediment of the sea from the Miocene period, from the Tertiary. 15 million years ago, there was a sea here, which was cut off from the ocean. The climate was hot and dry. It resembled contemporary Mediterranean climate. So, in shallow bays and lagoons of the sea, water was evaporating and salt was crystallizing from supersaturated solution and sedimenting. We are now in the chamber called spiral, as of horizontal transport from the past. The wheelbarrow on the left was used in the 18th and the 19th century. The barrel on the sledge was used to transport grinded salt or salt in small pieces. Sledges were pulled first by people, afterwards by horses. Horses began to work here on the turn of the 17th century. According to old legends, the mine was inhabited by dwarves, very diligent. We are now in the Holy Ghost Chapel, from the 17th century. It was brought here from an old. This crucifix is made of wood, and it is very well preserved with salt from it.
Wow.
This chapel is dedicated to blessed two flights of steps, platform for the choir below, presbytery with the altar, vestry, side chapels and side organs. He worked here for 25 years, even when he was a retired miner. After his death, Tomasz Markowski decided to decorate the walls of the chapel with scenes from the Bible. Here are his two basilicas. The figure of Our Lady was carved in a more polluted variety, that's why it is darker, and the figure of God the Father in a very pure variety of salt, 98% purity. This salt was found only in small quantities in the deposit. In medieval ages, it was used only by Józef Markowski. Before he started to work on the chapel, he had been an ordinary miner. The Markowski brothers inherited their talents after their father. Their father was also a sculptor amateur, and he taught them to sculpt. And below there is a bas-relief by Antoni Wyrobek, young Jesus teaching in the temple. And here a small engraving, a painting by famous Polish maker, behind the statue, there are pieces of Christmas out from the ground. And on both sides, St. Clarence and St. Joseph. perspective is better seen from the distance. Above the steps, a miner with a torch. The Weimar chamber was mined in the early 20th century. It is the only chamber on the rock which was mined with the use of explosive materials. Its volume is over 10,000 cubic meters. First, an exploratory gallery was made in the block of Krakow. We are now on the level called Kazanów, 130 meters below the ground, between the second and the third level. This chamber, from the early 19th century, is called the Piłsudski Grotto.
We're in the gift shop, 100 metres underground, and just a bar. You can start a shopping arcade down here. Does it move? Okay, this is concert. There you go. Due to a slight technical hitch, well, a navigational hitch, the building we found